Well, good morning. Or good afternoon. Hi, I'm Bonnie Willis, and I'm with the Wells Fargo Foundation. And I'm excited to talk today about rural economies and the influence it has on the greater economy. I'm going to start by asking a question. How many people in this room, you can raise your hand, would consider that they live in a rural community? Who lives in a rural community? A handful. And I'm going to ask for a follow-up if I could. Do you mind if I ask you a question about your community? So what type of community is it? Is it agricultural or? Wonderful. And I don't know if we have a mic. If we can get her a mic real quick. How would you describe, just real briefly, the financial situation in your community?
Be happy to do that. Hi, my name is Sherelle Bird. I'm with Sawiga Rising. We're a nonprofit advocacy organization. And the economies are not great in rural communities. We live in a community that has 39% poverty rates. We're in the top 1% of food insecurity. And we're one of the poorest congressional districts in the nation. So it is very dire. And we're in a condition where we have a lot of brain drain. So a lot of our younger people are leaving the area for better jobs in urban settings. And we're in a situation where a lot of the funding does not trickle down to our area. So part of what I do all day is try to remind people that there is life outside of Atlanta, human life, and we need policies and we need funding for those areas to thrive, because Georgia can't thrive if the rural communities are not thriving.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was exactly what I was hoping for. She wasn't a plant. Exactly what I was hoping for. And what I was trying to do here is just give a voice to the rural community and to recognize, well, there's many of us who might have an analytical understanding of rural communities. We might read reports, we might fund reports, how important it is to center our work in the community and make sure that we give a voice to the people in the community, which is really why I've got this wonderful group of panelists right here. So we're here today to talk about rural economies, and I'm going to let each person introduce themselves, tell us just a bit about their work, and also a quick comment on why this is important, this discussion.
Would you like me to start? Please. All right, well, I will start. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Great. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Tommy Beth Willis, and I'm from Moultrie, Georgia. Shout out to my people. That's just about 45 minutes away from where I live. How are y'all doing? Great to see you. So I live in a rural community. I live in Colquitt County, we are the largest agricultural county in the state of Georgia. Most of our businesses are somehow either agriculture or agricultural connected, and so we understand and we walk the life of rural communities every day. But I'm blessed and very fortunate to work with a company called ACE, Access to Capital for Entrepreneurs. ACE is headquartered out of Cleveland, Georgia, which is a rural community, White County in northeast Georgia. Started there 24 years ago, serving 4 rural communities, and expanded through the years to serving a lot of metro Atlanta and North Georgia. And last year, about summer of last year, ACE expanded into South Georgia. So we're now proud to say that we cover all counties in the state of Georgia, providing capital, coaching, and connections. We work with small businesses, oftentimes those that cannot get access through traditional funding resources. So we're a CDFI, which means a Community Development Financial Institution. A lot of our clients, but not limited to, but a lot of our clients over the 24 years are going to be businesses that are run by women, minorities, and those to low to moderate income areas. And as you were talking about South Georgia, that's really everything south of Macon for sure. are the resources that we do have struggle perhaps getting them funneling on down to our areas, but we're hoping that ACE and the team that works with me in South Georgia, that we can help change some of that and move the needle, bringing resources to South Georgia businesses that need it. We have a small business initiative for South Georgia for startups, and that's in South Georgia only, which we are seeing small businesses growing in South Georgia, so we're excited to be able to have that initiative. But we're proud to be working with ACE and bringing these resources to small businesses across Georgia. And then you said, this is important. Yes, this is truly important because not only we realize there's rural communities in North Georgia as well, so for all rural communities, it is extremely important to make those connections and to stay informed for sure.
Eli?
Yeah, it's a good afternoon. So I'm going to start out by introducing myself in my indigenous language. I'm Navajo, the Nation from Arizona. I'm an original indigenous citizen of this country, 100% indigenous. So my name is Eli. Yat'e she'e Eli tuli yanishia. Hunagahi nishlun turik wanja bashichin. Ashihe etashiche. Aldokia ani etashanala. Okuteo denen shle. So my culture, it's very important that we identify ourselves matrilineally as well as our paternal side. And I am a wellness coach in the Gallup, New Mexico area, as well as the Great Navajo Nation, which is also known as one of the largest tribes in the world. And I also want to take this time to also thank Wells Fargo and Operation Hope for allowing me this opportunity to be here today. And the second part of the question is why this is so important. This is extremely, extremely important to me because I come from a very, very, very marginalized community. And many of you guys probably can relate to that. I'm indigenous. We're always left behind. We're always last with everything. So I'm that connection to the new world to bring a different blend of financial literacy that I was never taught. So I think that's very important. And I'm that connection to my community because I did not speak English until I was 10. I bring that specialty to the community because also I speak the Spanish language at a fluent level. So all in all, that's very important for my community, my tribe, as well as those to who I serve. Thank you.
All right, good afternoon. My name is Rukia Kelly. I am the Director of Global Social Impact at FICO. I have the esteemed privilege of supporting many programs that FICO offers around financial empowerment and inclusion. One of those being Score a Better Future, where we have the opportunity to go into communities and bring a holistic approach to how we talk about financial literacy and supporting the entire family. So not just the youth, not just the adult, but how do we encourage and create economic mobility for the family. We also have credit and financial counseling that we offer to nonprofits where we provide them with information about the FICO score and how they can support their clients through the process as well. I am from Charlotte, North Carolina. Financial literacy was not something I was taught growing up, and that's why I have such a strong passion for it. It was something that I had to teach myself. And so now that we have programs in place, now that it's being requirements in schools, we can actually see our communities have the opportunity to thrive. And in rural areas, we need to make sure we're creating programs that speak to those that are in those communities. Financial literacy is not a one-size-fits-all. And so we have to make sure that when we bring all of this information forth to any of these communities, but specifically rural, that we're speaking to them and meeting their needs and making sure that we are creating content that is relevant to them. So thank you to Wells Fargo, thank you to Operation Hope for the partnership that we have with them as well, and excited about this conversation today.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Odetta McShay. I am a 23-year and counting advocate for affordable housing and community development. I have developed affordable housing. I have managed small commercial properties. I have worked with nonprofits to bring them grants and capacity building. I have supported developers of color over the state of Georgia to accomplish their visions for community building. And most recently, had also traveled around the state to various communities, urban, micropolitan, urban, rural, to discuss systemic vacancy. And some of the strategies that can help folks manage those parcels of land and buildings that might be dilapidated or abandoned and vacant. My personal connection to this issue comes from a little bit different perspective. I am a first-generation American. My mother is from Jamaica, and my father is from Grenada. Wagwan. And I sit here as the product of tremendous focus and creativity. My grandmother baked wedding cakes up on that hill in Jamaica. She milked cows and sold the milk to give her children piano lessons from that mountain in Jamaica. She sewed wedding dresses. I went there every summer till I was 10. That is where I had my pets, my outdoor experience, all of those things. And she sent every one of her 3 daughters off that mountainside into the world for education and to accomplish their goals. So I believe that I represent the outcomes and possibilities of people that are in, let's say, non-urban as well as rural. I'm not sure if you all want to call Jamaica rural, but we were on a mountain. I have washed in a little pink, heated the water up and washed my hair in a little pink bucket. So I think that might count. So very glad to be here.
Thank you. Now I'm regretting not asking how many people would identify as living in a non-urban environment. We're going to have to try that one later. So thank you so much for the introductions. The first question I have is really, we've got ideas about rural communities, but I think we would also probably say we have a lot of misconceptions. So I'm going to direct this to Tommy Beth. What are some of the misconceptions that people have about rural communities?
Yes, you're exactly right. There are a lot of misconceptions about rural communities, the people that live there and the things that they offer. One of the things that is a misconception is that, we're just all the same. Like, we all have the same beliefs. We're all the same lifestyle, the same culture. But in reality, rural communities are very diverse in their own self. So we are and we're proud of that. And that together and collectively, we make up amazing communities across the state of Georgia and beyond. I think another misconception is that we just live a slow, simple lifestyle. If you check with my insurance company and the number of speeding tickets I've had this year, I don't know that slow is really in my personal vocabulary. Traffic is slower, except for me. Traffic is slower than you would see in a metro area for sure, but that doesn't mean that we're not moving the needle and we're not trying to move things forward. Many of our jobs that we have require very long hours, flexible hours, especially those in agriculture. It's not a 9-to-5 job. A lot of people think that rural communities, that people are uneducated, and that's not that is a very misconception. We have a very strong, across Georgia, we have a very strong technical college system, along with 2-year, 4-year colleges that are very strong in a lot of our communities. A lot of people are continuing their education, and it's not just straight into the workforce, though we have many that go straight into the workforce as well, but we have a great education system as well. I think one of the challenges is that maybe we're resistant to change. We just do it the same way we've always done it because that's the way we always do it. But we are very innovative. We're very open-minded. Technology, we realize, is a key to today as well as the future. Our farmers, they control so much on the farm just from their phone that they hold in their hand. They turn the pivot systems on, they turn it off, they check a lot of things like that. A lot of people misunderstand that rural communities, we're just farmers. That's all we do. Everybody farms. And that's not the case. We have a lot of different industries. We have small businesses in rural communities, and those are the heartbeat of rural communities. There's small businesses that are owned by local families, some multi-generational, and they are the heartbeat. If you have a very thriving downtown of small businesses, it radiates out into the economy across the county. The community that I'm from, we actually have a four-year medical college, which is, you think, well, why would a rural community have a medical college? Well, so we have PCOM, which is the Philadelphia College of Osteopathic Medicine. They specifically have a campus here in Swanee, not too far from here, and of course in Philadelphia, but they intentionally opened something in South Georgia because of the lack of health care, lack of doctors. Statistics show that a doctor will typically, once they have graduated, will set up office within about 60 miles of where they went to school. And so for the last 4 years, we have seen doctors graduating from the medical college in South Georgia, and they're starting to fill the healthcare needs that we have. So I think those are just some misconceptions that people have about rural communities, that there's a lot more to us than what people sometimes think.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So, as we look at the issues in rural communities related to financial inclusion, we know there's some commonalities. We see fewer bank branches in rural communities than in years past. We see that the credit scores are lower and that the attitudes about credit are different. As you just mentioned, we see fewer small businesses. But I'm going to ask our panelists to go a little bit deeper on each of those issues. And Eli, we haven't talked about this one before, but I'm hoping you can speak to this. One of the things that is a challenge in many rural economies and communities is access to the internet and broadband. I know that's true on the Navajo Nation. Can you speak a little bit to the impact of that on the residents?
Yes, so for sure, we have a lot of issues with accessibility, just about anything you can imagine. Medical access, infrastructure, technology. And the way I make this work for myself personally is by being creative, by being that person to be that connection to the technology world. And so we have to make it work regardless. And so I think that's very important in that sector.
Eli, if you could tell us, what impact does the difficulty connecting through broadband to the internet, what impact does that have on the Navajo community? How does that impact their ability to access financial services?
So in the way that it really impacts my community's financial services is, one of the ways is we have to drive over, honestly, 60 to 70 miles one way just to get to an actual banking facility. So with my role, I have to go to these communities, engage with them as well to make that impact more meaningful and more beneficial for them. Thank you.
Thank you. And Rukia, if you could speak to the differences that you see in both the attitudes around credit and then the impact on credit scores.
Yeah, I mean, they're, unfortunately, to the point that was made, is the banks are pulling themselves out of these communities. And so when you think about the lending, traditional lending, and opportunities to build credit, they're starting to become few and far between. Residents are untrusting of these institutions because they're not in their communities. The lack of broadband or technology access doesn't give them access to these new fintechs and opportunities to scale their access to credit in that way. And so if you don't have people that look like you or in your communities where you can go and sit down and talk to someone in a bank about how to build your credit and what to do there, then how do you do that? It is a chicken and an egg. I mean, we can bring the financial literacy and education into the schools, into the churches, but if there's no way for them to practice that, then how do they improve it? How do we improve the economic mobility for them in those areas? And so that's where the personalized financial education to ensure that it aligns with the everyday realities of these communities become very important. So right now, there is a lack of trust of these larger institutions because they're not in the communities. And then there are challenges with getting access because of the lack of digital and broadband technology.
Thank you. And Odetta, I'm going to direct this one to you, but would welcome other comments as well. Some of the challenges, financial challenges in rural communities have also kind of created an opening or an opportunity for predatory lenders. Can you speak a little bit to how that shows up in a rural community as well?
I think that shows up often in how folks are coaxed away from the value of their land and their homes and do not have access to advice, to information, to the connections that would help them understand what happens when there's an heirs property situation, when you can have multiple descendants with small bits of ownership in a single property. That's a very vulnerable moment. Folks that would like to get that land can buy even a piece of the ownership. If one of those descendants sells, they have brought in a predatory presence into the rest of the conversation. That person can sue for partition and really force the rest of the family to deal with a loss of the home. I think all of these issues wrap up, whether it is distance, lack of understanding perhaps of certain credit systems, accessing the capital in your home for a variety of reasons, which might give you some of that money that you could use to either purchase more things, to invest in your business, to upgrade the home itself. Even internet access, not being able to just go quickly, find people, where are the programs. It adds this layer of complexity and complication to putting together your strategy. And that is always, that creates vulnerability for anyone with a predatory intent, be it to take your property, to hoodwink you out of money, to try and sell you a quick solution to something, or to help you solve a problem, but it's really not to solve your problem. So I think it's about making sure folks have all of the best information coming from people with their best interests at heart who want to really partner with them.
Thank you. So we can see that the gaps in service actually are causing other issues, driving the need for a different type of service, which everyone on the stage provides. So what I'd like to hear from Eli about first is when we talk about financial coaching and counseling, we'll often say, this isn't a one-size-fits-all. And it's not a one-approach-fits-all, right? So if you could tell us, Eli, a little bit about how it's different on native lands with native people, how the process for financial coaching and counseling might be different, and how recruiting someone may be different for financial coaching or counseling services.
Great, thank you. What an awesome question. So in my indigenous community, it's a very special role that I play for Operation Hope in collaboration with Wells Fargo, which I'm also very thankful for. Within my community, the first thing that really stands out is trust, because if you all know American Indian history, we lost trust within our government. And it's the same thing on the reservation, we don't trust people. So I'm that connection to that community because I'm indigenous myself. I can relate to these clients myself, especially in their language. A person my age typically doesn't speak their language, and I'm more than grateful that I'm able to engage in that way with my clients. So that's how it's very different, extremely different. Also, explaining the Western way of how money works. In my culture, money is just money, we spend it because we want to. Probably similar in other communities as well. So it's very specific, it's very special, and I think that's really important. And with that, I've been able to just really get people moving in a better direction because I was never coached financially as a younger individual. So I'm using that as a way, as a tool to help my own people, my own community move forward in a better direction so that way they don't have to deal with not knowing how to save money, not knowing how to deal with credit, not knowing what to do with their money, because I've never been coached that way. So I'm always thankful for that, and hopefully we can move in a better direction within the near future. Thank you.
Eli, I've got a question for you. So I know in Native communities, the family unit is of core importance. How might you be able to explain to the audience how the coaching process related to that family approach may look a little bit different than in urban areas.
So how that would look different in my role is basically, one is how we identify each other's, what role we play in that specific community, and also what topics we will be talking about, and also just really staying at a specific level that's more understandable for them. But family is, of course, in many cultures, family is very important. So we always want to make sure that we always keep that connection, and being also very culturally sensitive in terms of how I speak to an elderly individual, how I speak to a younger individual, or how I speak to a middle-aged individual.
Thank you, Eli. And Rukia, I'm interested in the, we talked about there's fewer bank branches in rural areas, fewer services. How does someone in a rural community get a loan? Are there options or alternatives outside of the banks for people in rural communities?
There are, if they want to do a payday loan or, another type of predatory pawning. Often some of the actions that those in urban areas have to take for alternative access. But there are still community banks. There are still credit unions. There are still CDFIs in these areas that are truly equipped to support these communities because they are in these communities. And when we bring in collaborative opportunities with these CDFIs, we actually have a program at FICO called Lenders Leading Inclusion, where we're partnering with MBA and CDBA to provide our alternative data scores to MDIs and CDFIs, as well as provide them strategic credit inclusion and provide financial literacy within this program. So the collaborative spirit of it and bringing these resources to sometimes these institutions that are serving underserved communities are also under-resourced. And so through collaborative opportunities across sectors, this gives us an opportunity to serve these communities and allow them access and help them to get access to credit and be able to extend that credit responsibly.
Thank you. And Tommy, Beth, my question for you is around small business. If you could speak briefly to what the challenges are with building, starting, maintaining a small business in a rural community, and what services and interventions are available to small business owners.
Absolutely, it's a great question. So small businesses, probably one of the biggest challenges, or a couple of them actually, one of them is going to be, the first one is going to be access to capital to get the ball rolling, to get started. I'm thankful to be working with ACE, and like I said before, we hope to be able to meet the business owners where they're at, whether they're starting up a business or they've been in business and they're looking to expand or just need working capital. So access to capital is always an opportunity. I think another opportunity is workforce, jobs. Small businesses create jobs. If you're looking at the state of Georgia, they really define a small business as about 300 employees. Well, if you live in a rural community, 300 employees is a major manufacturer. So we, in a rural community, we're really talking about businesses that have 20 or less employees. But again, finding those people that can work, that can do the work, that can have the schedule and the availability to do that. Internet access is another opportunity. There are some strides that are being made in South Georgia. Kinetic by Windstream is partnering with some of the utility companies to run internet through along their lines. So it's going to save time for having to create and dig more. So they're trying to partner with those. So partnerships are really great. There's some regional initiatives for leadership, for business owners specifically, to help them to gain the access that they need to resources to help them grow. But again, some of the, also for a rural community, they compete with bigger box stores and also shopping online. It's so important. If you live in a small community, support your local entrepreneurs, your local business owners. Those are our friends, our neighbors, those we go to church with, the people that we do life with. We pass them on the street. If we're not supporting them, who is? And so it's very important. A lot of chambers of commerce and downtown development authorities, they'll have shop local campaigns. It is truly important. I think we really saw that back during COVID when across the nation we saw a lot of businesses close, but also we saw people realize the importance of shopping local, because if you didn't shop in your local community, you probably didn't have nowhere to shop there for a little while, but then also you didn't want those friends and neighbors to be going out of business. So together we can really make a difference in rural communities, but it's going to just take us working collaboratively.
Thank you. Now, I'm not going to ask for a show of hands, but I would imagine there's some funders in the room. And I was reflecting on Rukia's comment that, we really need to see collaboration between public and private. And also reflecting on kind of how we started this whole conversation, which is the importance of centering in community and giving a voice to the community. So Odetta, this is a bonus question. We didn't give her this one either.
No pressure.
I'm interested in understanding your perspective on the importance of public-private partnership, and if you have any recommendations on how to make those things happen, any tips for the possible funders that are in the room. And then if you could also speak to, in those relationships, how do you keep the work centered in the community?
Thank you. In my immediately prior work with the Center for Community Progress, we were very lucky to have the consistent support of Wells, frankly, in operating support to us to allow me to get in the car and drive around and meet directly with communities from Montezuma to Camilla to Rome, Gainesville, Savannah, Waycross. We went all around and saw so many places, just at Brunswick, so many beautiful places, Washington, Georgia. And so one, that concept of flexible general operating support can never be understated. And investing in the real work of relationship building. Relationships lead to efficiency. You can design a program so much quicker when you have a deep understanding of what are the challenges, who are the people involved, what's already happened. You can either pay up front for, by letting folks take the time to get to know one another, and then they quickly put together a program that is effective and taken up quickly by the local community because it's built on trust and communication. Or you can spend that time later when it all falls apart, and you have to go back and rework it and say you're sorry and make repair. So I hope that anybody, funders and anyone that would be working in that space would front load the work of relationship building and fund people to do that. It takes just as much time to get in your car and drive somewhere and have a beautiful day, for sure, than it might be to sit at your office and try to guess what people need. So that investment up front in general operating support. I think art and culture is also an amazing space. Again, seeing how many, unfortunately, empty storefronts there might be around rural communities now or in their historic downtowns, but the way that public art, bringing art and culture, businesses, small businesses into those spaces for revitalization, that brings young people, and it also is one of the ways that folks are connecting, be it through art, food, experiencing books together. And I find rural places to really just understand that they have a history of connection already. I think it's one of the superpowers of rural places, that they know how to connect to one another and they reach into their generational connections to solve problems together or tackle current issues together. As far as public-private partnerships are concerned, again, invest in local expertise. Think about serving, the volunteer opportunities, land bank authorities, downtown development authorities. There are these models of sort of community and local government connection that often have boards that could use that expertise. So sending your staff, sending folks out to be on those boards again would be critical, because then again, you're hearing firsthand what's going on and you're investing in relationships. So public-private partnerships. The last thing I'll say is how to define success. There are many ways to define success. It can be an output, the number of meetings, the number of folks that raise their credit score. Those are great, those are important. Then there are going to be metrics of success around, is trust being built? Are people comfortable in your presence? Are they reaching out to one another more often? Those might feel a little harder to track, but in fact, where there has been relationship building, you can ask us a few good questions and get a sense of how that's going. So really thinking about metrics of success that reflect what the community identified as success, as well as your sort of ticks, which are also important to be able to show that kind of scale. So scale wide, scale deep, and scale up, I think would be great concepts that would help public-private partnerships succeed even more.
Thank you so much. So we all got some good tips, and this has been recorded, so we can go back and take a look. But I want to open it up for some questions. Yes. There's one right here.
What organization are you from again? I'm sorry.
Odetta?
Odetta. Thank you very much.
Or your organization.
Oh, sorry, what organization?
Odetta, that's the name, your name there. Okay.
I'm so sorry. I am a freelance person right now.
Oh,
I am.
okay.
Yes.
Well, we have to connect then.
I would love to do that. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Montina Young Frazier, and I live here in Georgia, down in Henry County. And I'm an American descendant of slavery, so we, as a community, have never received reparations. Our ancestors had so much stolen from them. Many of my people, as ADOS, we can't save our way out of poverty, or I can say they can't. FICA, when we hear it, it depends on where you live. Zip codes, areas were redlined. So it's almost like having this conversation, we appreciate it. And I have been a recipient of ACE loans. I've owned my company 10 years. And also with Native Americans, you all have a Federal Bureau of Indian Affairs. But it does feel like as ADOS, I really would like to hear a little bit of conversation around that. How, again, we can't save our way out of poverty. What are some real solutions that we can come up with, even if many of us, have never received reparations?
Bonnie,
Other questions?
are we answering, or?
Well, how much time do we have? That was a big topic.
Could I just speak just quickly to something that brings up? So I think things like we need both reparations and we need a commitment to reparative action. And reparative action is how you design programs and the value structure that shows up in your programming. So I have been involved in developer of color cohorts where we had some core understandings around appraisal bias. Right, which means that if you're working in certain communities and they're going to be redlined and underappraised, if you're trying to develop there will always be a gap, right, that nobody else fills. So if you're going to design a program to help a developer of color working in those communities, you need some operating funds that fill those gaps. We want to think about acquisition of funds. Who has access to the friends and the family and the personal things? If that is not your community, you can only susu your way to so much pre-development money, right? So how do you, so then your program should include flexible pre-development funds. And then, of course, minimal reporting. The folks that do this work are already experts. They've either studied it, they are certified, they have degrees, or they have been living it. And so it is less, when we talk about capacity building, it would be less about teaching and more about getting them to the goal so they have the experience of the thing, and then they bring that experience to the next time they do it. So think about the reporting burdens, think about where the expertise already exists, and design your programs to reflect that you see that that's happening. Those, I think, would be some of the reparative values you could bring to designing programs. Thank you.
Thank you, Odetta. And I do want to ask, I think that was an incredible answer, or incredible tips, but did that cover the breadth of what you're looking for, or was it? Yeah. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. So I was going to suggest it might be a good session in and of itself as well. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you all so much for speaking. My name is Frank. In regard to the digital divide, the challenges that you guys are facing in rural in the rural communities? Have you guys, I mean, there's technology now. I just came from Patagonia in the middle of the ocean. We had data. So with Starlink, can you guys use that to help solve your problem?
Did you hear him, Eli?
Yeah, just a little bit, but I can answer it. I think exactly I know what you're talking about. So when you're talking about how business operates on the indigenous community, it's not easy. There are so many red tapes, extremely many red tapes that individuals just give up and move on. There's no way. It's 2024 now, and 80% of my community members, my whole reservation, which there's close to 600,000 of us, are still living without electricity and water. So that tells you how much, right? So we're a long way off. We're not there yet. Maybe another 20 years, 30 years, who knows? But we are not getting anywhere closer to that. So thank you.
Good afternoon. My question is around economic development incentives. What are some of the economic development incentives, if any, that are in the communities, or what would you like to see as incentives for people to come and set up their businesses, spend money there, to build out commercial corridors, residential corridors?
Tommy, Beth?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so I would encourage you to find out more about the economic development incentives that are available, to visit with your Chamber of Commerce, your Downtown Development Authority, and your county's economic development authorities. A lot of the times, those in the downtown will have perhaps funding or grants that will help cover some of the facades, that will help you redo the front of your building, whether it's signage, painting, and things like that, to kind of have a cohesive look, to help you with that. But then also check with your economic developers. A lot of times it's based off the number of jobs that you're going to bring to the community and how the impact that's going to have, the ripple effect that will have. So a lot of them do base that off of the number of jobs. Sometimes they can do tax incentives. Sometimes that it's a tiered tax incentive, based off the number of years if you're a really larger employee. But I would encourage you to definitely to ask those questions to those that are in each community. Each community should have an economic developer. I know they do in the state of Georgia. And so just find out who that person is and say, hey, what incentives are available? What resources can you share with us to help us impact the communities for sure?
Can I just ask, is your comment related to the, do you want to quickly comment on this piece?
Yes. So thank you for your answer, but I can tell you, I've invested, in the last year, we invested $20 million in Tuskegee, Selma, and Jeffersonville in Ohio. My difficulty with the county development corporations is their bias. When I put properties here in Atlanta, they gave grant money. They did investment money, not just tax incentives. They actually sent bond financing to us. They get 2% lending. But when I go to a rural community which really needs this kind of investment, you don't have advocates in those development corporations for those counties. So who are the people you think would be the cheerleaders or the advocates inside the development corporations for these small towns? I mean, I watched them do this parade at Selma every year, and people don't realize that their economic circumstances are worse than they were in the 60s. So who do we go to?
So for the state of Georgia, I can speak to specifically. We have through the Georgia Economic Development Council, or GEDA, and so I would definitely, because they have the state level as well as the local levels, I would definitely speak to them, because there is some initiatives that are coming out of the capital in Atlanta that are trying. There's some rural initiatives that are coming out. They are a little bit slower. I mean, that's part of the problem. They are slower getting to us in rural communities than versus in Atlanta, and that's very well recognized in my area. So yes, but we're still trying to put our foot on the gas.
Great, thank you. So I think we need to wrap it up. I encourage you to look for each other outside of this room. If you have follow-up questions, I want to thank everyone for their participation, and a big thank you to the panelists. Thank you.